here at Nkosi Talk Shows, Find Your Own Voice, Lead from Within. So with me today, I'm with Shireen and Carol Ann Cooper. She's not in at the moment. She's trying to come on, but the technology, I think, is not allowing her. How are you, Shireen?
I'm good. And you, Nomsa?
I am good, thank you. So the topic today is how do you know what you know? Uh, I think Carol Ann chose it live last week. Every human being carries a beliefs, idea, memory, opinion, assumptions, and conviction. We say things like, I know this is true, I believe this happened, I was taught this, or I have experienced this for myself. But beneath all this statement lies a much deeper question. So, how do you know what you know? So, what do you think about the topic, Shireen?
It's a lovely topic, isn't it? Because it really stems right back to how we've kind of separated out the mental knowing and the embodied knowing, and how those two had been far apart, right? So yes, it's a wonderful topic, and very often I think it's a topic we need to explore deeply, because there's such a breadth of knowing that we can learn, such a breadth of knowledge that we experience unknowingly, and how do we marry those two together? So I know, Carol Ann, you prepared for this topic, so I'll come back to you, and then I'll come back to me. Whatever, really doesn't matter. Um,
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm just breathing at the moment. Don't know what happened to my
all right,
laptop.
okay.
It's not playing ball, so I've come on my phone. Um, so yeah, how do you know what you know? Hang on, I'm just getting myself. Oh, sorry, everything's going. Oh, sorry. My laptop is now coming up with Zoom.
You want
Oh,
me to continue, or
can
you
you
just want to just
continue
breathe?
a minute?
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just gonna.
So most of us, that when we talk about knowing, we think about the kinds of knowing that are more intuitive, right? And often we don't realize that that kind of knowing is very, very sensory based. So we have, and we categorize it like clear audience, clear cognizance, clear sentience, clear vision, clairvoyance, right? And these are kind of all bandied words that we've had before, but they are all words that fit within our sensory system. And it's how we receive information from these sensory systems and make sense of them in a particular way. So, for example, if we think about clear cognizance, we hear people talk about, oh, I've just received a download, right? I've just received a download, or I've heard someone speaking to me, um, or I've heard a voice, right? Clear audience. If we go to a place and we start to get mental pictures, then that's clear vision, clairvoyance. And then when we get a sense of a gut feeling, or a sensing of energy, or a truth without any logical, what seems to be an imperative logical step, then we have clear sentience, right? The sensory aspect of us. And as human beings, very often we use these without being aware that we're using them. It's in our language, it's in the way we think about things. And generally, because we are very collective and we learn from other people, we often automatically know when someone says, well, I sense that, or I see that, I can see that you've got that, or we're getting information, and we're trying to make sense of lots of different types of information. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. And I think what part of this question is today, how do you know when something's true? How do you know how you know it's true? And I think that's the real question for me in when someone says, well, I just knew. Well, for me, as a person that likes to kind of understand things, I want to know how you've come to that decision, right? How have you come to that truth that you and do you follow that truth? What happens when you do, and what happens when you don't? Because a lot of research shows that we often have lots of feelings which we don't act on, but we only remember the ones we do. Or the ones we've failed to do, which is interesting. So we often forget how many times we've got things wrong, which is quite interesting in when we look and rely on a belief in our senses. So how do we know when something's really true? How do we know for ourselves? How can we give that to others? How do we explain it to others? I think that's where my biggest problem or gap was. How do I explain what was going on for me so that other people could listen to what I was saying? It's kind of, we need validators to some degree. So yeah, that's kind of where I was sitting, in the sense of kind of finding a little more of my idea of this intuitive knowing. Carol Ann, are you breathed into it now?
Breathe into it now. I love where you went, or what I was sort of hearing. Great aspect, yeah, the sort of our senses. How do we know? And just sort of bringing us in. I'm not sure how you started, but yeah, we sort of explored the idea that perhaps spirituality isn't something separate from everyday life. It's something we went through, and not just in moments of prayer, meditation, or even quiet reflection, but in our relationships, our conversations, our choices, even our work. So because spirituality is interesting, it just raises a question. How, that question is the title of today, is how do we know we know? And most of us don't stop to think. And I think where you've opened with, Shireen, is a great place to have people stop and think, all the different ways that we could know with our senses. And when we say, I know this is true, it may be that it's just true for you. It might not be true for others. And it's like, how do you know? And this is where sometimes relationships break down, because someone has their truth and someone else has their truth, their way of knowing and their way of knowing. And the two aren't the same. And we very often go, no, this is the truth, rather than, well, this is my truth. This is my way of knowing. And instead of being open and curious and going, well, okay, so what is it you know? How do you know that? We sort of tend to close down into our own way. And there are, what I've sort of been looking at is 5 ways of knowing, which sort of brings in some of what you were saying, but I think it expands it a bit more, which I'll go over later. So, there's I think we've got to that point where it's actually we're expanding, not replacing anything. It's like, what if there's more than one valid way of knowing is what we're looking at here. So what were your thoughts, Nomsa, when you were sort of looking into this topic and saw the title?
How's your laptop, Carol Ann?
Don't ask. Please don't ask. It's stationary at the moment, as it is. But I'm on my phone at the moment, so I don't know what happened. Whether there's too many people on the internet or this morning. I've already been on a meeting this morning early on, and it was a little bit slow. But I started coming on at 10 to 1. I asked it to start connecting. And so,
One of those days.
One of those days, yes.
Yeah, I like Shireen, you said we get information and then we try to make sense of things and stuff. And based on the topic last week, that's why Carol Ann chose this topic for me personally, I think we gain knowledge through many different pathways, and we also learn from our sense of families, community, educations, books, religion, science, personal experience, culture, history, you name it, and our intuition and reasoning. Yet not everything we hear, see, remember, or believe is automatically true. Sometimes we can, it's like, I used to hear people when they go to clairvoyant or psychic, and then people, they'll be like, he just told me exactly how I feel, like the things that I know. No one would have known those things apart from me or my, like, tell me things. But since I've started the cleansing and stuff, I realize actually it's you who gives them that information.
Exactly. You're giving them the cues. They're reading you.
It's actually manipulation. It's actually you. That's why the Bible does not allow it. It's you that actually, they use your soul to actually, for you to speak. So you are actually, because the angel of God, he was like, um, I don't know, when was it? A few days ago, it was coming in, and then one of the spirit tried to manipulate it. And he said, don't bother to manipulate me. I already know what she is, what she's not. So don't you bother. So then I started to realizing actually every information that we do is actually, it's in our disk. So when someone says, oh, this person who never known the information and this, it's actually us who are giving them that information. Information. So the angel of God was showing me, was like showing me, and even Satan himself was showing me that everything that he does, you telling him what is in your record, and then he punishes you for what you know. So I think it comes down to what we know, things like that. It's just, I think we learn every day. That's why they say, like, I can become, we're easily influenced by people around us. That information, and that's how we get it. So if that person is a bad influence, they can influence us to become that. So I think that's how we download all this information. And mostly we learn from God as well, because God is the God Almighty. For me, everything that I learn, I just learn from God. And even sometimes my parents, I used to do things, and my parents will look at me and say, how do you know these things? And how do you? So I'll be sitting there, and they'll be wondering, and I'll be telling them that one is doing that, that one is doing that. And they'll be looking at me like, old child. And I'll be like, whatever. But it's all God, and it depends with how that information comes to us. And Shireen, as well, you mentioned the intuition that sometimes we remember what we want to remember. I think because God lives within us, He tells us what we should avoid, what we shouldn't, what we should. But I think we pick what we need. We pick the information that works on our, that will benefit us. We don't like the one that wounds us. What do you think, Sharon?
I'm thinking where this is kind of feeling and leaning to you talking in the sense that you listen to God. There's something about being that clear channel, isn't it? It's about having the capacity to hear God, right? Rather than picking and choosing, but to hear and have a real sense of, I suppose there's a developed learning and knowing to trust that, right? Which doesn't always come straight away. I think children might trust right at the very beginning because I think they are just pure spirit anyway and connected to God. But as we get older, we start to develop another part of ourselves, and that part is the doubter, right? The one that kicks in, the one that tells us lies and not truths and all of those things, maybe because of social conditioning. It doesn't matter how it's formed, but the doubter comes in and kicks in. And that then makes it harder to hear the truth, right? It's harder to be able to listen to that voice that we know. And unless we've learned that from a very young age and continued with it, we often can lose that connection to that divine spirit, that God within us, right? And I think that's where we disconnect. When we disconnect from God, that's when we become unstable, right? That's when we start to have all the saboteurs or the faults or the problems that we might have, because we don't choose to listen anymore, and it just has become such a big mess, so to speak, right? So yes, I think it really is about how, and I think we're more likely when we've disconnected to then listen to false truths, right? Because we're trying to find our way, but we're not coming back to ourselves, right? We're going outside to find the truth, and we're not allowing it to resonate in a way that may be helpful. And I guess what I kind of think, and yeah, I mean, I use various different mediums with which to use counseling with, that one of the things that is really important is about going into any situation and doing what we talked about, the 12 spies, doing what those two spies did. Pray first, right? Listen first, take time to just gather first, so that you're going to look at the world very differently. And I think when we are so busy, we forget to do these things that actually bring us back into ourselves. So then intuition or intuitive knowing in some form can be confusing, right? It may not be the real truth. We may be hearing a false truth in that situation.
Yeah, I like that, because that disconnect, and then so losing touch with that, and you sort of you go outside of yourself, but that stopping and praying and listening, you then come to a place where you can actually discern. And I think discernment is a key word here, because then you can be open. You can you can hear something. You can go outside and ask what others are thinking, but by sitting and listening and going in and praying and asking for guidance, maybe there's things you can pick up from there, from what others have said, but you can listen with a different ear and be open to what that guidance is from within, and be discerning. And I love what you said, Nomsa. We pick upon info that benefits us. I think that's
we think benefits us.
We think benefits us. Yeah, we think we know.
Let's use it as we think.
There's a knowing here that thinks I know better.
Yeah.
In a way. And that's where discernment has sort of gone out the window. So yeah, it's picking up on information and being discerning, and rather than thinking, oh, I know better and I think this is going to benefit me. It's actually sitting with in what way is it going to benefit me? Is it really going to benefit me? But then actually picking up and taking the action on what you believe to be something that will benefit you, and maybe it doesn't work out, is not to make it wrong. It's just to go, okay, this is a learning experience. What can I learn from this? And sometimes, and this is a great way to learn. We fail to achieve what we want to. Well, fail is actually an acronym for first attempt in learning. Yeah, so we are learning, and the important thing is to be learning, so that we can expand and fully understand and get into that knowing that's here within us. as you say, Nansa, it's all God. God is within us, but we sort of somehow disconnect, as you were saying, Shireen, and that lovely capacity to be that channel and be clear and hear God. Yeah, what happens as with children? It just it sort of gets clouded, doesn't it? And you know, so it's that being able to trust, and again, it's that your environment, who you're growing up with, everything around you has that impact on you, and you start to question. And I think this is where I'm going to go into the 5 ways of knowing that I've sort of looked at today. It's the sort of way you look at something, it's what the question that you ask. And the scientific knowing is they're asking what can be observed and tested and consistently measured. They want something that they can prove over and over again. You know, that sort of the knowing. So it has to be observed. How does somebody know? How do you know? So science, that's how science goes. But the thing is, not everything is meaningful. Sorry, not everything meaningful is actually measurable. There are things that aren't measurable. The experiential knowing, which is what the question you're asking yourself, so that you think, well, you know, how do I know? What has my own lived experience taught me? And that's an experiential knowing. And this is where very often you get science and people who come from an experiential knowing clash, because there isn't that measurable answer to say, well, how do you know? Well, no, I've experienced it. This is what life's taught me, you know. And another way that you were mentioning, Shireen, is that intuitive knowing. What do I sense to be true before I can fully explain it? There is that intuitive knowing. And it's like, well, yeah, okay. What do I sense to be true? And then you've got all the senses. In what way do I sense it? Because that's what you were talking about, wasn't it, Shireen? And then there's the rational. Sorry, not the rational, the relational, relational way of knowing. And it's what do I discover through connections with people, with life? So what have you discovered? What do you know? How, you know, through conversations you've had, through interactions you've had with people. And then there's a 5th way, is the embodied knowing. What wisdom is my body communicating that my mind has not yet understood? And I love that, because your body is always communicating to you in some way. And there is wisdom in your body. And that wisdom we very often shut down to and hand over to other people and say, well, what's my body telling me? You know, there's a pain here. What's it telling me? Go into that pain and ask. Because pain is very often just an emotion. What's the emotion? Dive into the emotions, what's there. And you can dive deeper and deeper, and you come to that place that it is that loving place, that's where you can find that connection with God and that presence. And it is about being in the present moment. So I love those 5 ways of knowing, because it's the questions that we ask ourselves. Well, you know, how do I know? You know, what is telling me? So you know, as you can see, there can be disagreements there. You can have one way of knowing and then another, and this is where you can hear people arguing. But you can also get that disagreement in yourself, because sometimes something has been tested. You know, you've had test results that say you're healthy, but something in you doesn't feel right. You know, what do you do?
I like that, Carol, and your body communicating with you. I don't know how far you guys have gone to speaking to the earth. I think the body is on number 22 20 earth bodies. Is it number 20 or number 19 or 18? I was surprised, like you say, my earth body is communicating with me. It's like, okay. Yeah, so yeah, it's there. It's a big thing actually what Kero Ann is saying, that when your body is communicating with you, listen to it. And I also like when you say don't make things wrong. Whatever we think he has been communicated with us, if we got it wrong, it's a learning journey, because that's what life is about. Most people get stuck where they start blaming themselves. So I like the idea of Kero and never make things wrong. Just take responsibilities and just learn from what has happened and learn to listen more. I like that. And Shireen, as well, you said you mentioned about when we disconnect with God, we are more likely to listen to the false information. I think it's really, really important to be able to hear the voice of God. Um, when you hear the voice of God, mostly when you pray a lot, God communicates it very, very clearly. And is not a person that rushes things. Is just so calm and so. But all he does is he shows you the truth. It's up to you how you handle that truth. Like Dr. Olukoya yesterday was talking about is saying you hear people say, I hear the voice of God. But when they hear the voice of God, any information that is so exciting, is so, but any information that says, I don't want you to do this, I don't want you, I need you to stand still. We don't like standing still. We don't like to be told what to do. We just like to carry on and do things, and it was like we just pick whatever we need to listen. But for me, I've learned to, if I need to stand still, I stand still. If I need to do something, I do something. So I think that is really, really important. And also to surround yourself with I never used to understand when, because these motivational speakers, they actually, what they have done is they've done what Tony Robbins have done. They've read the Bible, they've meditated on it, and they've learned the principles of life. But when they talk about things, they don't explain why. They always say, when they say whatever we speak become things, whatever we do, the people that surround us, we become that. I never used to like it to look at it that how big that could be, the big influence. But now I'm realizing that if I'm hanging out with a friend, or if they're truly, truly struggling, and I put up a prayer out there for them and hand everything to God in whatever they're meant to do, and then making sure that my mind thinks good things about them, I end up seeing them doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, this is powerful. So I'm thinking, imagine if I was hanging out with bad influence, that means I'll end up doing that. So I'm like, I think it was last week, and then I'm started like, I got to really, really pick and choose who goes into my front seat now, because I can't just hang out with just nobody, because it's very, very important to what I know, where I know that information from, and where that information is going to take me, and the decision that I make as well. I think this topic is a very, 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 it's a very, very big topic, and it requires you to confront yourself about things and evaluating things, and truly, truly not making yourself wrong, but just walking in truth. I think they just want you to make a decision to just walk in truth. Say this information that I hold, is it a true information? And how do I know it? how can he save me moving forward? Over to you, Shireen.
Yeah, there were so many things that was going on there. I mean, I think there's something really useful, and I think what was coming up for me, one was an article that I read this morning, but one of the things that's really important that you were talking about, Nomsa, is, the company we keep, right? The people that are around us. And I loved what you said there was, I handed it over, right? I then allowed myself not to be contaminated by anything. I gave the power back to God and back to the person's own personal power and God and their relationship with God. I think what's really important here is Carol Ann was talking about relational intuition. This is really key in relational intuition, isn't it? Because when we realize that the moment we allow ourselves to connect in that way, we are now in relationship. So whatever power we have in that changes that for that person as well. So that's where you said, this is powerful work, because it is. It's really powerful when we realize that we have such an effect on people, and also how others can have such an effect on us. So I think that's a really important thing, is who are you hanging out with is absolutely going to influence you on some level. If you don't have enough discernment, if you don't have, we are, as humans, we will always go back in a way to what's more comfortable, right? What's been there before. And we will also go back to what is more predictable, generally, because it's less effort. It's less effort. So it takes a lot of effort to be able to, one, hand over things, two, to allow that relationship to develop into something else, in a sense of how do I hold our relationship in God, and I stay true to what I know to be true, right? So there's that's very, very powerful, and something that's really useful to pay attention to. And I'm just sitting in that, just really looking at it at another layer, right? We talk about many layers that we have when we hear something and we really hear it, as opposed to we just hear it, right? And we can do that. Often they say you need to listen to something 6 times before it's filtered right to where it needs to get to, right? Some things will get there straight away, but often we need to hear things enough times so that it can really get to the bedrock of who we are. And I loved Carol Ann, because yes, I use that kind of embodied wisdom a lot. And I think it's important, is the important bit that you said is, we mustn't get it wrong. I think the important bit is also about, how do you stay in curiosity, right? So it's it's really about recognizing and maybe sitting with a belief, and maybe learning, because it is a learned, you need to learn to trust it in some ways, right? Because if you don't know how to trust it, you can't really listen to the embodied wisdom. So it's about beginning to learn a way to listen to those checks and then honoring them to some degree. So if your heart is saying, hey, you need to stop doing this, then you need to listen to what the heart is saying, right? By actually doing the embodied wisdom, we have to access all our senses to some degree. We access what it feels like. We can imagine pictures around it. We can imagine it talking to us. We can imagine what would happen if we shifted and moved it. So we can give it a lot of different bits of information that will give us information that will then give us a deeper truth of what to do next. And I think what's powerful, in the sense of what we talk about, what I said earlier on, is as a child, when we're young, we're very much right-brained, so we don't really have much of a critical voice kicking in yet until we move into our formative years. And once that happens, we spend a lifetime trying to bring that information back so that we're becoming a whole being again, listening to our body, listening to the embodied wisdom, right? So that we're able to hear the truth. And the truth is God lives in us. So why are we not listening to our embodied wisdom? Because it hasn't been something that's been in the domain of mainly women, right? Because we have always tended to be more embodied. And so therefore it was never bothered to be researched about. The scientific method wasn't really interested in finding out about embodied method. But we can test those things. Easily enough, we can see on skin whether we're sweating more or we're sweating less. Can we see changes of those things? So we can actually test now embodied sense. And we can see them fluctuate depending on how we're getting our information. So I think it's really lovely that we've now moved into a world where we're starting to recognize that they're not so separate, that actually God is science, right? And science is also about understanding that there are many, many different ways in which we can receive information. We've just totally thought that, it has to be what's observed. But actually, when we go into embodied senses, we are observing. We're bringing all those observational powers, that the sense powers, the auditory powers, we're bringing them all there. We're focusing presently on that. We're staying in that moment, which is actually what God wants us to be, in the present moment, not out there in the future or the past, but in this present moment, to be and live here. That's where we find heaven. I mean, I was watching we've got rabbits, and I was watching rabbits eating out, and we've got a lot of rabbits sitting around. They just seem to be, nope, we don't have enough foxes. And I was just sitting there watching this rabbit chew under the tree today. And I sat there and I just thought, you know what? I can sit here and do a little practice. And I allowed myself to really look at that rabbit and just really think about it in the sense of what a beautiful thing it is to sit and be able to see this rabbit, wild as it is, but it sit there and allow that part of my heart to just open up. And it was actually in that moment that I started to think the thoughts that were far more useful and powerful to my own sense of being. So I think there's something really key in staying and working with that embodied wisdom and saying, okay, right, I want to have this feeling that's going to make me feel even better. Bring it in, activate love, take away fear, because the moment we activate love, we're more likely to actually activate all our senses in a very different way. And God is love, right? So if we activate love, what happens is we have much more clearer channels. And it was really lovely just to watch this thing and think, oh my God, I'm in awe that this little animal is just doing that. And I just felt so good. And it really was such a powerful thing for me. So yeah, I can see how we can create relational data, and particularly how we're noms. So we've got to pay attention to who we're hanging around with, because actually people do influence us, and by actually staying really clear, listening and praying, and handing it over is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And what went through my mind when you were saying, Nancy was saying about being aware of, how other people influence us. I think we also have to be aware of how are we influencing others. I think you touched a little bit on that in something you said, Shireen. And that's what sort of came into my mind was, well, if they're influencing us, then we're also influencing them. And so how are we influencing them? And I think we have to be very present to that. And so our own knowing, our own way of being, if it's impacting others, then our responsibility is for us to really be in tune with ourselves and really get to know in all ways possible
Mm-hmm.
of this knowing that there is something bigger than us, but is within us, that is us. You know, it's that parody. It's like bigger than us, but it's in us and it is us. How do you know? How do you get your head around that? And that very often is something. Well, you can't see it, so how do you measure it? So that's where science goes away from it. But for me, it is that embodied knowing. It's been listening to my body, but it's more the experiential knowing that has really shifted my own thinking and way and my life over the years. And that happened when I first started training in brain gym and educational kinesiology. It was something that just shifted for me. And I had somebody who was listening to my body, and it's like my body was going, oh, wow, this person really wants to know what's going on here. They're not trying to tell me that it knows better, you know, or it's not listening at all. And that opened me up to, wow, there's something in this work. But the more I trained in it, there were certain processes that I did, balances as we call them, whereby one in particular, I went back to an emotional time, a really traumatic emotional time that was connected to my birth, that I had no conscious memory of, but this body remembered because it remembered the emotions. And I went into, and I was just saying, I don't want to be born, I don't want to be born, I don't want to be born. It's like, oh my goodness. And fortunately, the person that I was with, who was also training in brain gym, she did something, held these points here for me, that the stress release points, so helped me to just work through what I was going through in that moment. We finished that balance, and then we did, or not the balance, we actually finished that section, and we redid that learning menu, that activity that we'd done. And so it brought me to a place of, oh yes, I want to be born. It's like something cleared in that. But that really, that for me was an experiential knowing, a really deep experiential knowing of what is stored in this body and what this body knows, and actually what it can share with you and tell you if you are willing to listen and be present to it. And I also got to know that nothing was shared with me or opened up to me or given to me that I didn't have the tools or the resources to deal with. Because there might be somebody there that can support you, or you just know yourself, you know. So there is an experiential knowing is really quite powerful. But I always kept thinking, how can I share this with people? How can I share it? So I kept really silent for many years about what I'd unlocked in that, about my birth. And it was about 6 months later that I just in a conversation with my mum, and she just turned around and went, oh, you were a forceps delivery. You didn't want to be born. And I was like, oh, wow, really, mum? You know, I don't remember what the conversation was. I just remember her saying that. So, but I didn't talk about it or feel I could talk about it because I had this in the back of my head, medical and science. Well, how can you prove it? I can't prove it, you know, or I couldn't. But it was true for me, and the emotional strength with which that trauma was held, that experience, was really powerful. But it helped me to realize and to work with the people more, listen to their language, listen to what their body is saying to them, and dive in that way. And but I've opened up into now inquiring, well, what is it science is asking? That's really where a lot of this inquiry also has come from, because I've realized that yes, they have a different way of looking at something or wanting to know or exploring something. So I'm sort of, this is, I'm intrigued, and knowing that you've got all these 5 ways of knowing, and it's like, oh my goodness, as you said, Mum, so it's a huge, huge topic, and discernment is really key, and being curious, staying open and being curious, and I think how do we stay in curiosity was a great question you asked, Shireen, because I know I was brought up with curiosity killed the cat. So stop being curious. And it's like, but there is something else that I've heard since, and I can't remember what it is. There's another line that something brought it back. I'll have a look and see if I can find it. But yeah, so it's recognizing that, okay, that you hear that curiosity killed the cat, so immediately that kills your curiosity. But there is something that brought it back to life, and I will look up that phrase. So curiosity, being curious, is also key to this. Staying open, being willing to look and listen in different ways and explore your own senses and how things are coming through. Yeah. Nancy, you're muted.
Yeah, it's good to be curious. I think curiosity is really important. I like when you said, Carol, and how we influence the others as well is really, really important. How we show up for them and what the things that they learn from us as well, I think is really, really important. I was looking at Shireen's live on LinkedIn. You downloaded, was it live or you downloaded the video? And I was like, this woman, she's good. She should be doing these videos very often, but she does it and then she disappears.
Jesus, when did I do the live?
I don't know. The your video about souls.
Oh, right.
Where is the soul located?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, like you and Amanda are actually annoying because you're like, you put this good content out there and then you disappear on me. I get into it and then you disappear.
Yes, I need to do a few more. I agree
Yeah.
100% with you. Yes.
So how will they influence the Carol and they're torturing me? They show up with the good content and then when they're done, they just disappear on their audience. Yeah, so I was just like, I got excited. I was like, that's Shireen. She's just posting and then she's gonna. I think it's really, really important, Carol, and what you've said, how we influence people. And also you said our bodies know, they communicate with us a lot. How you did your brain gym and your body started communicating with you. And Pastor James teaches that the power, there's few fast that you can do, but the fast that apparently is more powerful is the silence fast. where you, where you go into a room for 12 hours and say nothing. Apparently, it's
that'd be
really,
so hard. I'll have to.
yeah, apparently that's the most powerful fast you can do, or maybe you can choose 3 hours. It's difficult to do it, but it's really, really powerful. I think that's where Carol Ann um, comes in, the power of your body, where because God lives within us, where He start communicating with you now. Because we live in this world where we are so busy. Even when we pray, we like God, we tell God what we want and we are out. We don't even have time to listen to his response for 5 minutes. So we just pray quickly and we go. So I think it's really, really important, Carol, and what you've just said there, really, really important. Pastor James talks about it a lot, and Dr. Olukoya talks about it a lot, like how we should actually listen to our inner being and listen to our body because we can communicate when you did the brain gym, you actually started discovering the things that you didn't know about yourself. I imagine if we had that time, if we can give ourselves like 1 hour each every day to say, this is my time, no noise, nothing. I'm just going to be in a quiet place and just listen to God, listen to the Holy Spirit, listen to my body, and just be in that place. Imagine the intelligence, the divine intelligence. We'll be all genius, but we are always busy. And also, Shireen, you said as a human, we will always go back to what feels comfortable. And also, you mentioned that to trust um, that embodied wisdom, trust the truth. It's really, really important to trust the information and to trust the things that we do, and also the power of activation. Who else was talking about the power of activation? Or is the guy X Witch? And I think Pastor Farida was talking about it as well. Yeah, that's Pastor Farida within us. And also you activating love. I think love is everything. Honestly, I think in our heart, when we carry love, we are able to like communicate, we're able to hear good voices, we are able to hear so many things that we couldn't ever imagine. But when we carry hatred, carry jealousy within us, and carry so many things that don't serve us, I think that's where rejection, whatever that is, and we carry so many things, it just distract us. So for me, I just choose to, like what you're saying, Shirini, to activate love within me, to say no matter how this person have hurt me, or no matter what I think I know about them, I'm going to love them. I choose to love. I don't care what they've done. I don't care how. But before I used to like, who does this person think they are? No, they can't do this to me. Who do they think they are? I just used to fight myself. And then I realized actually I'm fighting my own energy. But now I'm in a point where I just respond with love. But I have to be aware the wrong is wrong. But all I carry is love. Wish them love, wish them well. Because I think that is really, really important. And also the language around us as well is really, really important. The words we use can shape how we understand our reality. For example, describing someone freedom fighter, activist, and all these things. And also the music, like there's this music like R&B or rappers where they're rapping, but when they're rapping, I always say to my daughter when she's listening, I'm thinking, what happens when this thing goes into your head? That's disturbing. So I think it's important. What we listen to as well is really, really important. We don't realize how much it affects us until it does.
Yeah. And I think rap, if it's that rapid, which is what it's doing in a way, I think there's a rhythm and there's a cadence to rap that takes it much deeper very, very quickly. However, I mean, rap, you can do rap. I've heard rap being done in praise of God. So I've heard rap in many
I
different
love
forms.
rap, but what I
And
don't like is the swearing words.
exactly, you don't need to have rap that is, wrapped up with other stuff, which is not so great. But I think if we absolutely choose to listen to music that's going to uplift us in some way, even if it is rap, it's how is it uplifting us? Do we have a filter for ourselves to check? Is this moving into something that's taking us into a more negative place? Or is it something that's uplifting us and making us kinder, nicer, more considerate, more loving? All of those things. I then think that, you know, we're finely tuned, musical beings. Our whole body is a musical aspect, and we're always attuning to sound. We're always attuning to rhythm and tuning to some form of vibration. So I think it's really important that people understand that and recognize that, yeah, we are, you know, we influence in the way we talk, in the way we say things, but also music has a really big influence on how we are. And, you know, anything that has a rhythm and a cadence and makes us, and it is very fast, makes it harder for us to decipher when something's really good for us or not, because we can get hooked up on the good feeling, and it may not be the right good feeling. So there's something there as well, which is really important. So I think, you know, in that, I think part of today, and something that's really useful, and I'm going to bring this article that I was reading in the Times today, which is really about putting dogs into MRIs, because dogs can intuit what they see, right? They respond to the different moods that humans have. And they also, and they talk about, actually, when they looked at certain types of visual images and things like that, they started to see that there wasn't actually so much difference between fear and happy faces. What the dogs were doing were paying attention to everything else. And this fits with intuition, right? I mean, a dog doesn't really talk and have a discussion with itself, but what it does do is it responds to what it's receiving, and it's making sense of what it's receiving, and then it makes a choice on what it's going to do. And I think there's something about, when we talk about intuition and in relationships and our states of being, is how do we use the information that's coming in? How do we embody it in such a way that we can have the right codes, so the moment something doesn't feel right, we respond to it very quickly. We can go, this doesn't fit right with me right now. This doesn't fit right with what I believe about God or what I believe about spirit. I can discount it. But often what happens is, when things are so fast, they go below our threshold before we're even aware of it. So what we've got to do is raise our intuitive threshold to some degree, so that we can filter very quickly what really isn't appropriate for us and what is. And we can also, by raising that intuition, allows us to connect deeper with people much, much quicker. So from a relational perspective, we actually build stronger relationships when we have stronger intuitions, but intuitions that we have actually learnt to trust and understand. So there's always been some work around it, but we raise our intuition threshold so that we can absolutely check out very quickly when something is happening. We get alerted to it quicker. And I think that's probably where I want to kind of end today, is really about, how do we raise that eventually? What do we need to do to raise the threshold of intuition, so that we can use it as a powerful skill or tool in helping us be a more spiritual human being?
Love that question. Absolutely. That's where we're sort of going, isn't it? Going back to what you called silence fasting, Nomsa. It took me back to when we did a 24-hour sponsored silence when I was at school, and it was one of the most difficult things I think we've done. But yeah, it's really powerful, and I like that thought of, perhaps, maybe just sitting in intentional silence, rather than I'm just sitting or I'm just being, but it's that intentional silence and being present, and giving myself that time and just going, okay, what's coming through, but just being silent. I love that. But I love that silence fasting. That's a new way for me to look at it. And then just one quote here: spirit may not always change the way we know. Sometimes it changes the depth with which we listen. So that's just another angle there. So to round up here, today we've explored the different ways we come to know. But another question naturally follows. If life is speaking to us through many different channels, how do we learn to recognize which voice we're actually listening to? So next week, we'll explore the difference between fear, conditioning, intuition, and spirit, and how we begin learning to discern between them, which I think ties in what you were saying in one and going, Shireen. Yeah. I look forward to continuing next week and seeing where we go.
Me too. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone.
Yeah. Namsa?
I think for me, what I leave with you guys is make the truth your goal. Make truth your goal. I think that's really, really important. The final like seeking truth rather than merely seeking to prove yourself right, which requires courage because sometimes truth confirms us and sometimes it corrects us. Ask questions is really, really important. I've learned to ask questions when I was a child. And I think that's why I do the job that I do. If I don't understand something, I ask questions. My family call me nosy Parker. But I get the information that is useful because for them, they stay with questions. When someone is dead, you can't ask them questions. So also examine evidence as well and listen carefully and challenge your assumptions as well. And also respect knowledge, admit uncertainty, learn from experience, and be willing to grow as well. I think that is really, really important to grow from what you know. And it's really, really, it just gives you a simple knowledge of filling your mind with the information that is about developing your ability and to seek the truth with courage as well. I think that is really important.
I just looked up, are we still live? The second half of that phrase, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back.
Back, yeah.
Thank you so much. What's the topic for next week, Caroline?
I said it earlier.
Okay.
You want me to? We're exploring the difference between fear, conditioning, intuition, and spirit. Yeah.
Okay.
And learning how to discern between them. So I think we're bringing discernment in here.
Awesome, amazing. Yeah. So guys, if you're watching from YouTube, please do subscribe to our channel and share our message with your families and friends. And on Facebook, we have two groups, a Unique Billionaire Mindset and Gossip Talk Shows. Please join the groups and be part of the family. Or you can go to the website, hopespringeternal.com. And if you're looking for love, you can sign up for coaching. There are coaches there. You can fill out the form. And we cover everywhere, guys. It's good now we can coach virtually. So if you need coaching, don't say I live far. Distance is not a barrier anymore. May God bless you. I shall see you guys tomorrow. And these guys will see you next week.